So this presentation is about the common ski cutting practices from a variety of operations. I want to acknowledge my collaborators that you can see on the screen. They're practitioners and well connected to a variety of operations and quite wonderful to work with. So the objective of this presentation is to identify common practices in operational ski cutting, which operations can use when revising their procedures. The goal is not to identify which practices are appropriate or optimal for any sector, jurisdiction, or scale of operation. Real brief background on ski cutting. As a way to remove unstable snow, ski cutting has been mentioned in publications going back to 1936, which is about the earliest avalanche publication in English that I know of. According to some of the avalanche course manuals on our bookshelves, ski cutting was being taught, at least in Canada, to avalanche practitioners in 1974 and to winter recreationists in 1985. And there were papers by Doug Richmond and Vesely that identified patterns in near misses and ski cuts resulting in injuries. And then in a 2019 paper, my colleagues and I estimated the risk of ski cutting by avalanche practitioners, and that led to 3 shorter publications and a video with similar content. During this presentation, we're going to identify a toolkit of practices from the operations that responded to our surveys, and I like to think of these as an assortment of practices to choose from, and they're grouped into the various categories you can see here: people, terrain, personal equipment, snowpack, and the actions on site. So how might you use this toolkit? And I'll give an example here with the practices relevant to snowpack conditions. You might look at practice number 1 and say, yeah, we're already doing that. Number 2, yeah, it doesn't really work for our operation. Same with number 3. But you might find number 4 interesting and the basis for a new practice in your operation. So this presentation is about sharing a toolkit of practices for operations to pick and choose from. The surveyed methods varied. We gathered practices. 21 operations submitted written practices. We did 6 interviews with operations managers, and there were 20 responses from an online survey. So we received 26 responses from US ski areas and 21 from Canadian operations. All 47 operations do ski cutting. 25 of the 29 operations also made it clear that they use explosives. 18 responses were from ski areas, 12 from guiding operations, 11 from government agencies, and 5 were from other operations. But I'm not going to break down the results by sector, partly because we hope operations can learn from the practices in other sectors. It's been called cross-pollination. And we're only going to look at the most common practices in this presentation. Some of the practices like use of transceivers, shovels, probe, and radios are so obvious that I will skip over them. The level of detail varied widely between the operations. Some operations have quite detailed procedures with a long list of procedures, quite specific. Other operations had very brief general procedures. For example, while prioritizing the safety of the field staff, the team will use ski cutting techniques appropriate to the snow conditions and the terrain. And there's also some middle ground. For some operations, the type of terrain is selected at the morning meeting after the expected snow conditions are reviewed. And a couple of these operations also review the appropriate techniques for the expected conditions at their morning meeting. Although this presentation focuses on the more specific practices indicated on the left of this chart, we don't draw any conclusion about the level of detail or on-site judgment that is appropriate for any operation or sector. So a year ago, we started asking for written procedures, and soon it became clear that some operations had consistent procedures communicated primarily through training and mentoring. Others had more general guidelines for ski cutting, and a few operations reported not communicating practices within their operation. Instead, they relied on the prior experience and certifications of their staff. Of the 25 operations for which we're able to identify the objective of ski cutting, about 25%, shown here in blue, use ski cutting only for slope testing, and about 75%, shown in orange, also use ski cutting for mitigation, that is, for removing unstable snow. Okay, now we're going to get into the more detailed practices in the toolkit. This is the first of several bar charts, so I'm going to take a minute to explain them in the colors. The darker the color, the more responses allowed us to determine whether the operation did or did not use the specific practice. For the dark blue bars, we were able to determine if at least 10 operations did or did not use the practice. For the medium blue bars, 6 to 9 operations. And for the light blue bars, we're able to determine if 3 to 5 operations did or did not use the practice. So the content of this chart is about the ski cutting team. The procedures from 16 operations allowed us to determine the minimum team size. 15 of 16 specified a minimum 2, that is a ski cutter and an observer. Since there were 47 operations in the study, we did not learn the minimum team size for 31 operations. This could be because it was stated elsewhere in the operating procedures or missed by our survey methods. Only 4 operations specified the qualifications for the ski cutter, perhaps because it was specified elsewhere in their operating procedures. 5 of the 7 specified that the observer had to be a practitioner, so 2 operations indicated that non-practitioners were allowed to observe. And I'll use the same coloring of bars in the next 4 slides. There were a lot of practices shown here that specified the snowpack conditions as indicated by the number of responses and hence by the number of dark blue bars. 25 of 30 operations restricted ski cutting for specific avalanche problem types, and most often this was no ski cutting was allowed for hard slabs or deep slabs. Only 10 of 22 operations limited ski cutting to loose or recent storm avalanches. 20 of 20 allowed wind slabs to be ski cut. 16 of 21 limited wind slabs to the recent soft wind slab or to recent soft wind slabs. 19 of 34 put an upper limit on the expected size of avalanches. Typically, this was D1.5 or D2. So 15 of 34 operations did not specify an upper limit, or it was missed by our survey methods. 5 of the 7 put an upper limit on the expected depth of the failure layer. 5 of the 15 specified conditions for the switch from ski cutting to explosives. Now we're going to look at how terrain appeared in the operational procedures. Only 1 of 4 had ski cutting sites identified on a map. 6 of 7 specified small or short slopes. And why only 7 operations? It could be because our survey methods missed the point, or because the operations chose to ski cut certain large slopes before they're skied by guests or open to the public. Or ski cutting big slopes may be limited to selected snow conditions such as shallow loose snow. 4 of 5 specified that no ski cutting above terrain traps. So some operations did not prohibit this, and this could be because the slope with the terrain trap will be open to guests, or perhaps cutting above terrain traps is limited to certain snow conditions. And in other words, it can be quite difficult to write restrictions for a wide variety of snow conditions for ski cutting a big slope or above a terrain trap that is about to be open to guests at a ski area or skied by guests in the backcountry. 7 of 8 operations stated the observer's position, typically low risk or safe. Looking at this slide on the whole, note that we only identified 4 practices regarding terrain, and that the number of operations with specifications is fairly low, as indicated by the light and medium blue bars. This is quite a contrast from the snowpack procedures, or the procedures related to snowpack. Regarding personal equipment, 6 of 9 operations specified an airbag for the ski cutter. 5 of 5 specified a helmet for the ski cutter. Only 5 operations may have mentioned helmets because it could be elsewhere in their operating procedures or required by regulations, etc. Now we get to the actions at the site of a ski cut. Before ski cutting, 3 operations have the ski cutter and the observer look each other in the eye and ask, "Are we sure this is low risk?" This is only 3 operations, but it caught the attention of Mark, Vesely, and me. We think of it like something like the cross-check after arming the doors of a commercial aircraft. 3 operations specified cutting from a low-risk position to a low-risk position. 3 operations specify the ski cutter state the escape route before each ski cut. 3 of 7 specified no explosives in the ski cutter's pack. This means that 4 operations allowed explosives in the ski cutter's pack. And one advantage of this is that if the team encounters more wind load than expected or a harder slab than expected, they can use an explosive while leapfrogging down a ridge. 7 of 11 stated that momentum be maintained during the ski cut. What about the other 4? Why might alternatives to maintaining momentum be allowed? So we have an example here, a short video, John Stimberis. So in this clip of ski cutting loose wet avalanches, you'll note that momentum is not maintained and that is not a small slope. This is an example of why some operations state exceptions to maintaining momentum, and also how challenging it is to specify procedures for a wide variety of snowpack conditions and terrain. So here's part of the toolkit of practices that we developed in the last year. You can go to this webpage for the full list of practices. And while many of these practices may not be applicable to certain operations, we hope the toolkit and this presentation help those operations when they're reviewing or updating their procedures. Our surveys identified fewer specific practices for terrain than for snowpack, likely because of the challenges of identifying appropriate terrain for a wide variety of snowpack conditions. And we're aware that this presentation focus on specific practices which may not work well for operations that want more judgment and experience applied either at the morning meeting or at the site of ski cuts. On the resources page on the middle left of your screen, Mike Sadan, one of the co-authors of this presentation, has shared the updated procedures for Whistler heli-skiing, which are loosely based on the toolkit. And we're really grateful to the 47 operations that responded to the surveys during a difficult years.